So President Donald Trump just yesterday met with 33 Silicon Valley tech giants, tech leaders, and one of those in particular is very, very concerning. So we're going to talk about what most people missed about this meeting that took place at the White House. So Ryan, what do you got for us today?
Yeah, so let's run through real quick what took place at that meeting. And then, like you said, we're going to give this thing that happened there that kind of nobody's talking about. And then I want to go on a little rant on some of this tech stuff in education for kids, But so first off, this was a good meeting. I mean, it makes sense. Trump has been very clear that he wants to be a leader in tech. He wants to be a leader in AI, and he wants to be setting the stage for this around the world to where everybody is leaning on U.S. technology and all that sort of thing, whereas China wants to have a more collaborative approach, which I would say most likely that's so that it's easier for them to take the IP from other countries. But this is what Trump has decided to do. And so he had all these heavyweights in the room, including Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates. He was flanked by those two, which I thought was an interesting choice. And then, Tim Cook was there as well, and a few others. There was somebody notably that was missing, and that was Elon Musk. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But basically, they just went around and everybody kind of gave, Tim Cook talked about their investment that they're going to do. The CEO of Apple, and then also CEO of Google also talked about what they're doing. And so it went around the table, and it was kind of just what you would expect until it came to Bill Gates. And he was one of the first people to speak. And, he's not actually the leader of Microsoft anymore. He's the founder of Microsoft. And so he has transitioned out, and he says now that he has transitioned into innovation and technology. And he said, my second career is innovation and innovating in health in areas like vaccines and gene editing.
So that was the phrase that was the phrase that seemed the most concerning to me out of anything that took place yesterday. So we're gonna dive into that a little deeper later and what that means and why it's so concerning. But yeah, man, the crazy thing is like the fact that Elon Musk was not there, right? Yeah. And I'm wondering, are some of these people sort of a half replacement for Elon Musk? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and it could be. I mean, there's speculation as to why he wasn't there. We see that he was actually invited, and he said he sent somebody. What's that?
Did he send somebody to represent him or something like that?
Yeah. And so whatever the reason, he wasn't there. I do know that he has he's suing both Apple and OpenAI, and so that would have been interesting to have them in the same room. But He says he was invited but couldn't attend. And then it's interesting though. Melania was there, the first lady, and I'm going to talk about what she said. But first, all the press basically they didn't really ask much about actually technology and AI. What they asked about was RFK's vaccine hearing yesterday and what Trump's thoughts were on that. And I thought, it was interesting what Trump said, but he basically said that RFK's approach is different. And so they were posing this question as though, is this a problem for Americans that the vaccines are under scrutiny and all this? And Trump's basically saying his approach is very different. But he framed it positively. And so I even saw a tweet come out that said Trump's been saying warp speed, this COVID vax thing was a good thing. But he said, if it wasn't a good thing, I'd like to know. And what they're talking about is looking at the data and what the data really says as to whether that was a good thing. And so obviously RFK is under attack for all of that. But what they're pushing for is transparency and saying, what is the data really saying? And so that was quite a hearing, attacks from both sides and the establishment in full force there. So I do think that was interesting that was mostly where the questions were. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, but otherwise I'll jump into Melania.
I think that's interesting. I think that, obviously that's what the media was more concerned about that took place yesterday, out of everything. But I think one thing that some people haven't considered is what's the reason that Trump is doing this, right? What's the reason that he's meeting with all these people where some of the things are concerning, some of the things are positive, some of the things are maybe not. But in my mind, I'm like, one of the things that took place in the meeting was he got most of these people to essentially pledge an investment into America, into the United States of America to an extent. These are a lot of people that personally have a lot of money, but also control corporations with a lot of money. So I think that was one of the main reasons in Trump's mind. Probably one of the main reasons was when you're invited to the White House for dinner, you got to bring it. You're thinking, I'm going to put my Sunday best on. I'm going to bring a gift, right? Because I'm being invited, I'm being honored. I'm going to bring, what's the gift in this case? The gift is ahead of time, I'm going to figure out what pledge I'm going to make when it comes to bringing the investments back to the United States. So I think that Trump is thinking about it probably from that business-minded perspective. Now, there could be other reasons. We might get into some of those as well. But those are my thoughts on it. And obviously the media doesn't care about that so much because a lot of times they're not, America minded. They are, they are establishment minded, so they're going to talk about the thing that they care about the most.
Yeah, and Trump, he made a comment that the media has been pretty friendly with all these tech guys there. And somebody asked about censorship going on over in, I think, the UK, and mentioned Zuckerberg. And Trump said, well, go ahead. They actually mentioned him. And so Trump said, you can answer first, and then he said, welcome to your political career. Welcome to launching your political career. And Zuckerberg just said, oh, thank you. Yeah, no comment. And then it went to Trump to answer. That was very, very smart thing, unless he wanted to really get in the fray there. But I thought that was pretty interesting. But yeah, I think it's great. I mean, this is just Trump fashion. I think typical Trump playbook is you bring the big players in and you have them publicly commit in a meeting like this that they are committed to the U.S. and to America and to bringing jobs and technology and things there. Zuckerberg talked about how they're making buildings the size of Manhattan, with some of their investments in America and that sort of thing. And so, I mean, it's fascinating to see how this is sort of turned around. And one dominant theme I definitely understood was the comments where they said it without saying it, which was, we're glad to finally have somebody who's putting American businesses first and America first, and basically implying that the previous administration was not. And so, that's pretty obvious there. So I want to switch gears a little bit. So Melania was there. And so she had just that day spoken at I think it was an AI and education get together that they had. And so she basically, she had a different AI meeting just before this meeting. And so this was, I think, only her 8th public appearance so far in some of these different meetings. And so one of the quotes that she said was, the robots are here. It is our responsibility to prepare America's children. Our future is no longer science fiction. During this primitive stage, it is our duty to treat AI as we would our own children, empowering, but with watchful guidance. And so I think it sounds that's kind of a clumsy thing to say, I think, but I do think that we do need to be very intentional about our approach with AI with children. And what I want to just give a little 2-minute rant here is about edtech, education technology, and how technology has taken over the schools. And I think almost 60% of schools, 66% of schools have Chromebooks for every child.
Most people would assume, well, that's a good thing, right? Like this is this is progress. We're moving forward. This is the next step in technology or in education, and we want to see more Chromebooks in more students' hands, more iPads, all that kind of stuff. But what are the results? Like, what are we actually seeing?
Yeah, so great point. Great point. You would expect that. Yes, more technology, that's better. It's got to be better. Well, here's an article that says 5 reasons why Chromebooks for teachers make sense. And this actually is for students as well. But if you read through this, you'll find out not a single one of those reasons. It says because it leads to better academic outcomes for students. So I was kind of surprised, shocked by that. And in fact, the opposite is true. Silicon Valley, these things are dumbing down students. And so there was an OLPC, 1 laptop per child. That's what the goal was. And these studies says students who use Chrome or who use computers very frequently in school do a lot worse in most learning outcomes, even after accounting for social background and student demographics.
Wow.
That is staggering. So it's even normalized data. It's not like
a lot worse.
They do a lot worse.
A lot worse.
There was a teacher. Yeah. And there's a quote in one of these articles that says there's a teacher from Missouri. She's also a mother of school-age children. And she says, our test scores have been on the downward trend since Chromebooks came in. Who the H thought they were going to roll out these devices without following up? And another quote says, we found little evidence of positive relationship between student performance on the program for international student assessment and their self-reported use of technology, which is evidence of a negative impact. Okay, so the reality is that it's actually a distraction. That is all that it is a distraction. And it's a problem with behaviors as well. It restricts there's schools that are restricting phone use, and that's a whole nother issue. What I'm talking about is having a Chromebook instead of a textbook or a pen and paper being the primary thing that kids are using to take notes.
And the weird thing about it is this is coming out of Silicon Valley. Like, I mean, you just showed the headline right there. Like, it was like two articles ago, you were showing the headline that these things, these advancements or developments, it's like, that's where it's coming from. The best and the brightest, the tech leaders in America. And yet they're not bright enough or smart enough to follow up on it and look at the data and see if it's actually working.
That should give you an idea about the real motivation, is that it's not about education. It's not about improving society. It's not about better education outcomes. In fact, there's plenty of neuroscience and educational research that shows the very huge, it's a huge difference, distinguishing difference between handwriting and taking notes and flipping through books and using those sorts of things versus just using a Chromebook. And so some schools don't even have textbooks anymore. They actually have computers only, Chromebooks only. Textbooks are all on there. They're only interacting with the computer. And so neuroscience actually says that traditional low-tech learning methods like handwriting, reading physical books, face-to-face discussion, and working problems on paper benefit brain development and long-term learning, and they literally shape the brain differently than screen-based methods. So that means the structure of the brain that is being set up for the first 10 years of a child's life is being put together differently. That actually does not strengthen memory. It goes the opposite direction. But if you do the traditional low-tech methods or no-tech methods, it strengthens memory and strengthens critical thinking, empathy, self-regulation, and reduces distraction and cognitive overload. So basically these traditional methods build the mental architecture for this like lifelong learning, and these other shortcuts bypass those crucial development pathways. So this is not talking about distance learning, like if a kid wants to go to high school and still have all the books and everything, but have a teacher on the screen or something, or like Becca has an option where the parent can watch the screen with the child, but still interact with coloring paper and still interact. It's just like more of a guide at that point. And so that is completely different. That is not what I'm talking about. So I'm infuriated by this. I've mentored young boys and just seen this head on. So anyway, I had to do a little rant about that. Any thoughts? Otherwise, we'll jump into the Gates.
Well, my thought is a direct transition to the next thing we're going to talk about, which is the thing that's so concerning about this meeting that Trump had with these 33 Silicon Valley leaders. Is it's not the American investments. It's not the corporations coming back to America. I'm all for that, and I think that Trump is making the right move in that department. And I think for a lot of these people at this meeting, it's probably going to be helpful to the American people. But I think there's a select few of these leaders who want to make the population dumber. And so they want to put these Chromebooks in the kids' hands. They want to do things that actually make it harder for students to learn, harder for brains to develop. Why is that? It's because later on, they're going to be easier to control. Exactly. That's simply stated. They're going to be easier to control. The dumber we are and the less reasoning skills and rational skills we have, rational thinking skills, the easier it is for them, the elites, to control the population. And why would they want to control the population? Well, this brings us back to the comments made by Bill Gates, and it's like a lot of people know some things about Bill Gates, but if you really start to dive into it, he is what, I don't know if I can get sued for using the word psychopath, but he gives me that impression, and there's reasons why. I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not trying to like slander him. I'm trying to warn people in using that language. I want to jump into some of the major concerns here. Okay. So there's a lot of things. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. What are the problems with what he said at the meeting? Well, he's, you talked about how he's in the second phase of his career, right? And man, somebody on the way out can do a whole lot more damage than they could on the way up. And the reason is because on the way out, you're thinking my time is short and I got to get the most done possible, right? And so to me, Bill Gates is not becoming less of a threat. I honestly think he's becoming more of a threat to humanity in general. So what did he talk about? He talked about his career now being innovating in health in areas like vaccines or gene editing. But what are the ways that he wants to try to do that, right? This is what he said. The president and I are talking about American innovation to the next level, taking American innovation to the next level to cure and even eradicate some of these diseases. He mentioned polio, which is one that they're close on, he said, and then they have the science for that. But also he said some like HIV and sickle cell We do need new science, but the U.S. has the seeds. We do need new science, but the U.S. has the seeds. See, Bill Gates is wanting to take his ideologies and his agenda and get government-backed mandates behind them and government-backed financing and technology and resources. Now, he has a lot of resources, but with the help of the government behind it, instead of him just being somewhere out on a street corner a billionaire on a street corner shouting ideas, now he has something to enforce those ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he went on to say that AI could help expand healthcare access with the United States at the helm. Again, he's connecting those two things. It could help expand healthcare access with the United States at the helm. He wants the mandate. He wants the power to be behind the agenda, right? And so here's my concern with that. Mandated healthcare that is run by AI instead of human beings, because if you put those two concepts together, right, you get some really weird things. AI currently makes some decisions based on what you want it to say. And that's one of the reasons why if it has no information, it hallucinates still, right? So then maybe there will come a time where it stops hallucinating. But it's like, who's going to judge? Is this a hallucination from AI, or is this,
right?
You know what I mean? Like this doctor, it's like, what doctor do you recommend me going to? Well, here's a great one in town. Just don't go on Tuesdays. That's usually when he's hallucinating. He might diagnose you with something you don't actually have, and then treat you and then tell you afterwards, oh, I made it up. Right. Like, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about when it comes to AI currently. Right. So at the moment, we know it would not be good to replace doctors with AI. But Bill Gates says AI will replace doctors. Here's an article titled "Bill Gates Says AI Will Replace Doctors." Is he right? He suggests that artificial intelligence will transform many professions, including medicine, even saying that it will replace doctors in some roles. And this is a quote from the article. There are more medical studies published each year than any doctor can read. AI systems trained on the latest peer-reviewed evidence can synthesize knowledge in seconds, a capability that promises to make care faster and in some instances more accurate. So even the article that's kind of for this is admitting, like, in some instances more accurate. Like AI, yes, it's brilliant when it comes to processing information and collecting and curating information very quickly, but that doesn't mean that it's always accurate, and it doesn't mean it didn't make something up to fill in the gaps, and it doesn't mean that it's not being controlled by another agenda behind the scenes that wants it to say a certain thing, which is what we've already seen. Like, if you go ask AI certain questions, depending on which company owns that AI, it's going to answer differently. Why? Because somebody at the top level told it what the facts are and what the facts are not, right? Instead of it judging based on common sense and reasoning, there's an agenda behind it. There's a truth that goes beyond the evidence and the facts. So there's a problem with that. I'm not saying that AI can't be used, in healthcare. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, when you've got someone like Bill Gates behind it, I'd be very wary of that kind of situation, especially once it becomes government mandated healthcare. That's a bad combination. Yeah. Why is it so bad for someone like Bill Gates? Well, Bill Gates is the one that wants to block out the sun, right? His solution
literally
is like throw dust into the atmosphere, block the sun. Why is that bad? Well, one reason is because Bill Gates has openly admitted in an interview that he wants to see the population of the world decrease. He does not want, we have about 8 billion people. He has agreed with the World Health Forum that says we need about 1 billion people. They want to see 7 out of 8 people gone. Like, that's what they've openly admitted to. And that, to me, is, and then we take something like government mandated healthcare and put it in the hands of someone like that. It's a very, very concerning thing. Here's another thing that concerns me. Just more evidence, okay, about Bill Gates being a wild card. Okay, he owns more farmland in the U.S. than anybody else, but he does not support traditional farming practices, and he thinks that we should all stop eating meat. He owns more farmland. He thinks we should all stop eating meat. He leases the farmland to farmers, but even the farmers that use his land don't all trust his intentions. So here's the crazy thing about it. He owns hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investments in seed development, fertilizers, lab-grown meat, plant-based meat alternatives, and insect-based meat, insect-based proteins, vaccines, and sterilization methods. And those are all the things he's pushing. So if you think there's not an alternative agenda behind that, you think he's got the best, and so this is when it comes down to it. This is where in my mind, I'm like, hey, if I'm going to take the lesser of two evils here, I would rather Elon Musk be friends with Trump than someone like Bill Gates. Why? Because at least Elon Musk has a future-focused mindset of, well, if the world is overpopulated, let's go find something. Let's go to Mars, instead of, well, let's depopulate the world. You know what I mean? There's a very different way of looking at things. And I'm not trying to defend Elon Musk or anything. I'm just saying there's the lesser of two evils there in my mind. But yeah, this is what he said in a interview with Technology Review in 2021. Bill Gates said, I do think all rich countries should move 100% to 100% synthetic beef. You can get used to the taste difference. And the claim is they're going to make it taste even better over time. That sounds great. Thank you for making that synthetic beef taste better. But the problem is the scientists have told us who do the cancer research that it can cause cancer. Like they've just said that right out, like synthesized meat. It's lab grown. What it is they take cells from an animal, like from the muscle tissue, and they mix it with chemicals so that it stimulates growth in a lab. Like that's what's happening. And you're telling me like there's nothing wrong with that. Italy in 2023 became the first country to completely ban synthesized lab grown meat.
Synthetic meat. Wow.
Synthetic meat. Because there's a problem with that, right? Florida, Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, is doing something about it here in the States. He banned the manufacturing, sale, and distribution of cultivated meat. And he said, take your fake lab-grown meat elsewhere. We're not doing that in the state of Florida. So at least some people are standing up against this agenda and this narrative. Not everybody at the moment, but it is literally. So I said the sign. It's the American Cancer Society that has opposed lab-grown meat, arguing that the bioengineered meat could trigger an antibiotic resistance that could cause cancer. Like that's what they said. So it's like, and I don't even trust the American Cancer Society on most things. But if they're against it, it's bad. You know what I mean? If they're against it, it's bad. So at that point, so I'm just, you put the puzzle pieces together. It spells disaster to me. It does not spell a good situation. So I would say, maybe next time around, invite some of the tech leaders. Maybe not all 33 of them. I would leave Bill Gates at home. But what are your thoughts, Ryan?
Yeah, I really don't understand why Bill Gates. I'm a little disappointed to see him at the table there at all, because he's not really doing anything with Microsoft anymore, or maybe he's in some degree, but he's not a part of the leadership team. And why he shouldn't even be there. Like, get him out. He should have no relationship with the White House. Be done with it. He's already proven that he can't be trusted. He's blurred the lines between philanthropy and investment strategy. Like I saw because he's got all kinds of conflicts of interest, and he talks about pushing money into things, and then you find out he's got ties to the vaccine, like Pfizer, and his companies benefit from go away. And so you also see things that he's done with vaccines. Like there's a quote that they try and say was taken out of context, where he talks literally about population control, and in the same sentence talks about the best way to handle that is through vaccines and healthcare and this and that. And so you can argue that, well, no, it's taken out of context. But if you listen to the quote, it's kind of like, okay,
he's thinking about both these things at the same time. Yeah.
And so it's like, and then the synthetic foods, like there's not, like my wife does a ton of research in this stuff, and there's like the body, it's not only what you put in your body, it's what your body can absorb. And so if you take regular, like actual vitamin D, and then you take synthetic vitamin D, your body doesn't absorb it. It just kind of passes it through. It does not have the same effect. And that has been scientifically proven like through trials. And so synthetic food is not going to provide the same thing. It's like also what's called, if you hear the term, free radicals. Okay. Yeah. So you want whole molecules like this that are healthy in your body, and they go through the bloodstream and all that, and your digestive system. But if you have free radicals, that's broken molecules. And that's what's like ultra processed foods. And that's what the synthetic stuff would be. And that's just going through tearing up the system from the inside out. And so that's where people get leaky gut and all kinds of problems. And so forget synthetic food, forget synthetic vitamins, forget synthetic everything. And so for me, this is just a profit thing. And I don't even think he's on his own with this. I think he's got other people kind of behind the scenes as well, that he's just a part of this agenda, pushing these kinds of things. And Gates needs to go. And so I don't even see anything like Elon Musk. We can say, okay, well, he's doing some good in the free speech realm. We'll work with him on that, but we're not going to trust him in these other areas. Name one thing that Bill Gates should be working with us on. Like nothing. Like there's nothing. And
I do like this. Here's my thought. Here's where I think there's the silver lining. Okay. Is that I believe Trump invited these people to the White House in order to get these pledges, to get the investments back into the United States, to try to further that initiative, to try to fix some of our economic problems, U.S. debt, things like that, to try to get us back into a stable place economically. And I believe there is a very good chance that he's willing to host them at a fancy, elegant dinner, get pledges from them, hear one statement from each person around the table, and ignore what they have to say, and then not work with Gates on all the things he wants to do. So obviously Bill Gates is trying to push his stuff. He's trying to get into this sector. I don't think that's going to jive with what RFK is doing. I don't think it's going to jive with what Trump is doing. So I think we are going to see a split there. And I think we're going to see Trump moving forward with a lot of boundaries set in place, and a lot of guidelines he's not willing to cross. That would be my hope. That's my prayer. But that would be the best circumstance. And I think that's the silver lining.
Yeah. And I thought, Doug, before the show, he mentioned that, this could have been a tactic to kind of put him in the front and expose some of the things that with Gates. And you just made a great point that I think that this could have to do with showing a contrast between what was and what is going to be, because the same day RFK Jr. up there and having this exposing the truth. And I really appreciate Trump's positive frame, because he was touting warp speed or whatever the thing was called about the COVID vax as an accomplishment. I think he realized he should probably stop doing that and touting that, because that's not the way people see it. And they're criticizing it now. And so he's saying, well, I want to know the truth. And he framed the different approach as positive that RFK is taking. He framed it as positive because, well, look at the healthcare. We spend more than anybody, and we got the worst healthcare. We got, and RFK Jr. talks about we're transitioning from a sick care system to an actual healthcare system that's focusing on nutrition and lifestyle and these kinds of things that actually lead to health and not just symptom suppression and that sort of thing. So yeah, very interesting meeting. I'll leave it to you for any final comments, but I think it's a good discussion. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of this. And hopefully we'll see Trump use this as leverage, as he usually does, is just bringing something to the front to then be able to pivot and have somebody in a corner or have somebody dismissed because of how something goes after the fact.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope we see that happen. And I hope that more people are aware of what Bill Gates' true intentions may be when it comes to a lot of these different things. So, I think it was a great episode. Thanks for letting me join you today, Ryan. And for those wondering, we will be releasing a couple videos over the weekend. So we got some really good content coming for y'all, a couple of pre-recorded things. And we will see you live at the beginning of next week. See y'all next time.
God bless.